All right, tonight we are working, I'm not even sure this is quite right yet, is it? Not really.
Sounds perfect.
Does it? All right, I just, love the sound of my voice and I just can't stand it when I'm muted. All right, here we go. That's better. The second ray tonight, and we're working on the advanced integration or advanced meditation technique for the second ray, inclusive reason. Here you see the homework assignment that, we'll show it to you later. It's not much of an assignment. It's just how can you use this and how are you using this? And let's see here. We're more like at the end of the show than the beginning. What's going on here? Okay. Right. So Eva Marie will begin by discussing the second ray technique of fusion. And then we will have our alignment and meditation concerning that. And then we will have our group where you will discuss whether this type of technique means anything to you and has entered your meditative life at all, or that you foresee could enter your meditative life. Would it be meaningful to you if it did? So we can switch computers, and Eva Marie.
Well, I will keep talking. Keep talking. Test, test. Keep talking. Better? Okay.
Well,
Okay. It's there. Great. So I'll be repeating much of what was said earlier. And I like to tell a story when I'm doing a presentation about how I experienced preparing for this talk. So here we go. D.K. opens the section of his teaching on the technique of fusion with these words: "We now come to the consideration of a very practical matter." Practical is one of my favorite words. It means of or concerned with the actual doing or use of something rather than with theory or ideas. The next sentence states that the practical matter to be considered is, of course, the technique of fusion, which, he says, brings our personality ray to the forefront. His words are controlling prominence. That sounded just a touch dangerous to me. Isn't one of our learnings about personality that it can act as a big block to spirituality? So let's think about spirituality for a moment. This definition from the Tibetan sums up that big subject thus: spirituality is, essentially, the establishing of right human relations, the promotion of goodwill, and finally, the establishing of true peace on earth. Asking ourselves what's involved in establishing and promoting these things here on the surface of this planet, it's simple to see that personalities are very much involved. For that reason alone, learning a technique of handling personalities is practical. Mishandling, or not handling them, leads to, again from the Tibetan, the reason for the corrupt politics and the greedy, ambitious planning of so many of the world's leaders can be found in the fact that the spiritually minded men and women have not assumed as their spiritual duty and responsibility the leadership of the people. They have left the power in the wrong hands and permitted the selfish and the undesirable to lead. That's from Problems of Humanity, page 168. Establishing and promoting the opposite of this seems like a lot of hard work. And so it is. The Tibetan says spirituality will come when the person of vision awakens to the need of the hour and comes down from the world of dreams, of theories, and of words into the hard arena of daily and public life. He adds that those who have entered the arena of daily life must be willing to fight for what they know to be good, true, and right, standing firm against those who seek to distort the vision. In the short paragraph following, he states simply that all the distortions, all hindrances to spirituality can be summed up in one word: selfishness. The cure for this is, I think, what DK calls integrity of motive. Integrity of motive is learned and established during our earlier stages of growth. We've studied them in past years: alignment, integration, repulse of what doesn't work. These lead to our ability to use personality as a tool, but, says DK, it cannot be profitably used if integrity of motive is missing. So I interpret that to mean that attempting the technique of fusion without having in place a practice of soul control, a practice of service, and some understanding of and cooperation with the plan, without those, fusion is unworkable. In other words, we must be responding to the sensed pull or call of the soul. We must be answering the needs of humanity, and we must have an intelligent appreciation of the plan. Now we can get to work on fusion, which we are learning involves consciously using the will to bring in soul control, the use of love to evoke service, and intelligence to bring about understanding of the plan. It's apparent we are dealing with rays 1, 2, and 3. As already stated by Michael, there are but 3 techniques of fusion. We learned that the techniques need to bring about 3 things: illumination, imagination, and inspiration. In my practical little mind, this is because those 3 things are absolutely required to live successfully in a physical body. Pictured here is a small slice of the physical body in which our physical bodies live. It is close to the image I looked upon while flying here a week ago. The scene I viewed did not have the orange stripe you see in this one. Mine was black below, pale, pale blue in the center, and deep, rich blue at the top. It struck me then that it represents illumination, imagination, and inspiration quite well. Illumination, cosmos, galaxies, stars, the sun. Inspiration, planet Earth, with all its horrors and beauty. Imagination, the blue sky, where we look, at least in our mind's eye, and sometimes literally when we're children, gazing at clouds, for some ideas about how to be interested in and inspired by our mundane lives. Imagination is the go-between, isn't it? DK, in fact, describes it as sentient response to the world soul in all forms. I find this to be an excellent description of how second ray is meant to operate effectively in everyday living. It does require imagination, doesn't it, to figure out how to relate with a stubborn spouse, a difficult child, an injured pet, a non-responsive official, refugees fleeing from a corrupt and violent government. These situations demand different, sometimes challenging methods of dealing with our days. We could, I suppose, and I admit to entertaining the temptation on occasion, we could simply kill the troublesome ones, but that creates a boatload of karma to deal with down the road and it's not imaginative at all. So, imagination. Using it as best we can gradually gives our own individual piece of the world's soul the ability to consciously control our astral body. We cease entertaining the desire to harm those who trouble us. We begin to imagine solutions that might benefit not just ourselves, but the others who are also affected by whatever situation we're dealing with. We imagine choices that are not selfish or separative. We observe the various tendencies we have prepared that set ourselves apart from others, that keep us divided and disunited. We look at the environment in which we find ourselves and put our arms around it. We see inclusivity as a sensible practice because we recognize the inner point of life in all manifested forms. Choosing to imaginatively walk in the shoes of another illumines our minds as to how we might proceed when times are hard. I have found, when walking in another's shoes, that I am more willing to look at my own dark places. This is often due to the fact that we share dark places. Being in them with someone else makes them a little less fearful. We can begin to imagine solutions. Also, viewing ourselves through the eyes of another gives us clues about our dark places into which we need to throw light. Here we see illumination helping us to observe where new forms need to be built. Creative imagination comes into play now. DK tells us that the creative imagination is what deity uses to build. He adds that the soul is deity in the world of phenomena. So, once we have a good look at a dark place in our personal environment, we can consult with soul as to how to go about building forms that move the situation into alignment with the plan, more along the living patterns established by the world soul. This process of building solutions in alignment with the plan as we go about living our everyday lives gradually informs us that serving one another is more satisfying than taking care of just our individual self. We come to see that the practice of caring involves the individual self and service to the world self, and vice versa. With this comes the recognition that our function in the world of form is to be a creative agent for something greater and more far-seeing than our integrated personality. With this recognition comes the willingness to subordinate that personality to what soul sees is needed in the world. We gift the personality to the soul so that it can become a channel for synthesizing and creative energy. That channel originates at the monad and moves to the love petals of the egoic lotus. Its next stop is at the astral body, where I imagine the pure desire from the monadic source point is programmed in. DK says, the Spirit of God moves upon the face of the waters. Once programmed in at the astral location, the channel proceeds deeper into matter to the solar plexus. I'm sure we can all imagine the many ways the journey might detour and go into false exits at this stage. When the channel successfully arrives at the solar plexus, it cannot rest there, for that is not its destination. It must now turn and proceed to the heart. That's a bit odd, isn't it? Why doesn't it proceed directly to the heart, where it belongs? About this phase of the journey, DK says, solar plexus to heart, the needed duality connected with the astral body appears. This duality, I think, is the inspiration phase of this second ray technique. Ironically, we are required to experience the agonies and ecstasies buried in the solar plexus in order to be truly effective servers. Intensified service to those in dark places asks of us the willingness to suffer, the willingness to feel joy. Only with this willingness can we sense what knowledge or life-giving sustenance another might need. When that willingness is in place, then the movement to heart has a possibility of working. Then the heart can perform its function of sending life where it is needed. It is needed everywhere, isn't it? Our body's heart is not selective about where oxygen goes. Reasoning from the law of correspondence, I feel quite certain that whatever serves as the heart in our planet is equally inclusive. And this is why this technique is named inclusive reasoning. It sees the logic of everyone considering and acting for the good of all. Not easy, to be sure, but listen to what the outcome might be when we do it. This is the Tibetan. The living structure as it expresses ideas, the intricate beauty of the inner relationships within the expressing whole, the circulation of the energy which is working out the divine idea, the points of force and local points of energy which act as power and light station within that whole. All these stand revealed to the individual who is permitted, as a soul, to meditate upon such a phrase as inclusive reason. The personality and soul now function together. Two final quotes from DK which inspire us to do our work in the world in alignment with its soul. Meditation is so oft regarded as the means for establishing soul contact. People oft forget, however, that this contact is brought about very frequently by an inner reflective attitude of mind, by a life given to service and selflessness, and by a determination to discipline the lower nature so that it may become a true channel for the soul. And divinity must be lived, expressed, and manifested to be understood. God must be loved, known, and revealed within the human heart and brain in order to be intellectually grasped. The hour has come to manifest this reality on the physical plane in an organized group form. Let us do this. Thank you.
Eva has covered really important points and very elegantly, really. Wait a second. Yes.
You're muted again.
I'll say that again. I think Eva has covered very many of the important points and woven it together very elegantly, I would say. I would just like to, when we begin to think about how this can apply directly to ourselves as a technique, I would like to hammer home a few of the points which have stood out to me over many years of reading these paragraphs. He calls it, well, you know the words, meticulous entirety. Do they mean something to us? You know, Jupiter in Virgo, Jupiter in Gemini, the detail of the sensed whole, all of it, grasped meticulously and tirelessly, so that no matter how big that whole is, It's not just the wholeness of isolated unity we are grasping. We are grasping all of the relations that occur between, and we're doing that in a way that is beyond reasoning. It is an immediate intuitive flash which reveals all these relations. Of course, this has to be cultivated. So, right here at the very beginning, he gives us the names of this ray, which are important to think about, not just in terms of love, but in terms of the buddhi, in terms of the wisdom, in terms of the intuitive revelation of the detail of the sense toll, detailed knowledge. And he sometimes warns the second ray type, don't get caught in all the detail. There was a person with a second ray mind. The rays were 2, 1, 2, 1, 3. There were two guys with that. 2, 1, 2, 1, 3. They had a second ray mind that says, look, you get so overemphasizing the detail of things and are maybe not seeing the whole. But in this particular case, we would not emphasize, as the beginner does, the word detail. We would call it detailed unity. It's not just the details, it's the way that all the details are unified in a divine pattern, and he calls it the ray of the divine pattern. So think of those words. Detailed unity and the divine pattern, and is that the way you pursue your attempt to understand occultism? Some of you, I know what you do, and that is the way you proceed. So very, synthetic comprehension, Eva mentioned this, a very high point of synthetic comprehension. You wrap your whole mind around the whole, and you don't see it in a fuzzy and blurry way at all. It's extremely articulated, and you have all the nuggets, that's the word he uses, the nuggets of esoteric truth, and they're all in the right place, and they have been confirmed by the intuition. And it can drive the first ray types mad in the presence of some of these second ray scholars that want to make sure it's all perfectly well understood, okay? I sympathize with both. Isolated detail presented. There is such an amazing interrelationship between things, and we have hardly yet any idea of it. But if we read a book like Cosmic Fire, and we read it as initiates would read it, I tell you, the three of us together should form a triangle. I would like to have that little bit of water there. Thank you so much. Thank you. Bottoms up. All right. So we're not, the consciousness here is released from self-centered. You can't meditate this way if you're a personality. You just can't do it. All the petty point of view, the egoistic point of view, it's just gone. You are immersed in the beauty of the sense whole. Okay. So, and then he goes on and discusses, and Eva did, how at different levels of understanding we perceive the wholeness with different degrees of specificity. So eventually, as a truly master of the wisdom, we really see the organized organism through which deity is operating. And when you read Cosmic Fire, he says it ought to be good for about 25 years. And, I think about 500 years or 1,000 years or 2,000 years. I mean, every page could just be broken out into amazing research. Or maybe he said for another esoteric generation. Well, what's a generation after all? It's not a physical generation. It's a group of people that approaches in a certain way. So anyway, the word was mentioned about being permitted to meditate this way. And this permission comes to one who really is beginning to live as a soul and really beginning to approach the third degree. That's when the Buddhic revelation of the detailed unity and the divine pattern and all that really comes home in this Buddhic flash of realization. You can think it out, you can put things together, you can piece things together, but just like the shoemaker and the elves, the shoemaker goes to sleep, all the pieces are laid out there, and in the morning the shoes are together, and the intuition has done its work. So we cannot necessarily put it together ourselves yet. It's got to be put together in a flash of responsive understanding from the divine pattern. And we have to trust that that will be the case. Now, this is one of those, this is all about intuition. And I really want to emphasize how much buddhi is needed in order to meditate with inclusive reason. Yes, you're going to have all the details. Yes, they're going to be in the right place and they're going to be unified. But the intuition, the great whole maker, is the unifier. And look at the three planets that rule the Buddhic plane. Jupiter, whole maker. Mercury, linking all things together into one interconnected network. And Neptune, dissolving all artificial boundaries between things, so that you just see it. Neptune, the god of reasoning, according to Blavatsky. Those three planets really have to get to work to give you the pure reason you need here. And this always, when I read this part here, it just blows me away, you know. The reason here referred to is that pure, intuitional, infallible comprehension, which grasps cause and effect simultaneously and sees the why and whence and to what end all things are moving. I mean, we could just ponder on that sentence right there and see if we've ever touched that with our consciousness. I mean, you know, obviously it's encapsulated in the classic aha or eureka or oh, you know, then suddenly Pythagoras sees it, or who was the one, Archimedes or someone like that. They see it. And it was always there, but it just came down and constellated all the stuff they had put together or were trying to put together. Now, it's not possible for these meditations are not for aspirants. Aspirants are still personality centered. Of course, every true aspirant has taken the first degree, and DK talks about us as aspirants until we've taken the third degree. But anyway, in the usual sense of the word, aspirant, it is not possible for the aspirant to take these words into his meditation and profit greatly thereby, maybe a little, for he will be meditating as an aspiring mind and not as a soul. Now, does that mean anything to us? Meditating as an aspiring mind, thinking, searching, and not as a soul which sees, and in which the buddhi has been stimulated, the love petals, the synthesis love petal, you know, all those, that line of love petals and all that from buddhi. Then we will see differently and not as someone trying to see. No matter, therefore, how great his effort, it will be the material more than the consciousness aspect and pattern which will engross his attention. When he has reached the point where he can meditate both as a soul and a mind, involving also the brain, soul-mind-brain reaction, he will understand the purpose of these words and will view both the symbol, the inner living structure, and the emerging conscious ideas with synthetic comprehension. And now, here's Uranus. Every time you see the word simultaneity, watch out for the planet Uranus, okay? And a simultaneity of reception, which it is impossible for me to put into words. Bang, you know? I get an idea, and it takes me 10 years to work it out in time and space. It's all bundled together, right? Everything is there. But for it to be unfolded logically, in a way people understand, in time and space, it can take a long time. So these are the seeds that are dropped from the birthplace of ideas up there in the spiritual triad. We get them, and then we have to work them out. And the Buddhic comprehension comes to us suddenly, but then we have to translate it into the language of the three worlds so that other people can benefit also. So is it any use for him to say any of this? And he says, there are a few today, and there will be an increasing number in the next 2 decades, and hopefully we're among them, who, grasping the beauty of the presented idea, will be urged by their souls to work towards these ends. And if we do that, by working in this way, we will succeed in raising the consciousness of the entire human family. So, these are a few of the points. I know Eva mentioned and emphasized some of these, but it's just how this intuition works and what it reveals and how it's infallible. That's the thing. Yeah, I have a great idea. I think it's like this. I think it's like that. That's not knowing. Now, Master Moria calls the revelation that we have to have straight knowledge. And he always is complaining about the cerebral sinuosity of the brain. He doesn't like that stuff, all that twisting and turning in terms of the normal type of reasoning. He prefers the flash. Now, obviously, he's very Uranian. He says, if you want to celebrate my day, you celebrate on March 24th, That'll be Moria Remembrance Day, and it's got a lot to do with Uranus as the hierarchical ruler of Aries. So he loves fire and how beautiful it is and how quickly it reveals everything, and that's the straight way. And maybe some of us, on occasion, we can learn how to receive in that manner. So look, on the basis of what Eva said, on the basis of a few points that I emphasized, do you have any comments or questions about this? Do you think intuition works for you, or is it a psychic hunch? There is a difference. DK points that out. A psychic hunch may be, and it may be very erroneous, and it's probably coming from a lower level, but it could tie in with a genuine vision from the Buddhic plane. Yeah?
It's an intuitionally magnetized psychic hunch.
That would be the best, right? That's where we can work from. Yeah, we can work, because we have to have these psychic hunches, but if they're in alignment via the Antakarana, they'll really carry something from the higher worlds rather than maybe. Yeah, 1, 2, 1, yeah, go ahead.
It's in the quality. I notice a difference in the quality. If it's instinct, there's a lower, sort of warmer quality to it, more like a gut feeling.
Gut feeling, gut.
If it's instinct, or rather intuition, there's a coolness.
Yeah.
There's a flashing forth. It's instantaneous.
There's a difference between what is received by the solar plexus, what is received by the heart center, and what is received by the heart center in the head. Okay? The solar plexus, astral plane. Heart center, Buddhic plane. Very good. Heart in the head, monadic plane. And that's really infallible. Okay? And the whole head center has a whole atmic plane. He talks about these. Yes, Eileen. Okay, Eileen? She was next.
Are you on? Yes. I had an experience a couple of weeks ago where I was meditating and I was creating, and I was creating an idea in my head about the fact that Donald Trump is very concerned about vaccines, and vaccines is my issue. And so I was putting together a video, and I'm trying to think of what would be the theme of this, how it would go. And so I went to meditate, and I sat there, and I kind of said, give me the word, what, and boom, flash.
Download.
Flash. The word crush.
Crush.
I said, crush? I said, what do you mean crush? I mean, I didn't even thought of the word crush. How am I going to use the word crush? So I said, but I had to have faith that this was a direct flash.
Yeah.
Because it went crush. So during the day, sticking to that faith that I had, gotten that directly, that I started looking at the internet and I was thinking, well, maybe I can look at the thesaurus and see if maybe there's another word that would be more politically correct, as it were. And I said, no, it's got to be the word crush. Anyway, I came across a biblical statement, which is, he shall crush the serpent's head.
Bruise the serpent's head with his heel.
And will be bruised on the heel. So crush the serpent's head. So I just went for it to crush the serpent's head, and it came out with this incredible YouTube that's going viral.
Oh yeah? Okay.
Yeah.
We'll have to tune in on that, see what you've done. Well, it sounds like when you hear a word like crush, sounds like Vulcan is involved. Okay, thank you.
Well, I just wanted to go back to what we had talked about earlier with isolated unity and how you described it, Michael. You went like this: it's the whole as seen as one. And this one, inclusive reason, to me, the image is all the intricacies within that whole and
Yeah.
how they're all
Yeah.
connected.
That's right.
All
That's right.
the patterns,
Yeah.
the connections, the associations. It's that which makes up the whole.
Yeah, I think that's very correct. I think there is the whole divine science of relations, profound science, which is dealing with inclusive reason. And I think that isolated unity, as it truly exists, is beyond relation. That's why I said it doesn't make any difference what you are. I don't care about your quality, I just want to know that you are. I want to know your isness. I want to register your isness before I know anything about you. And then once I register your isness, I can get into all of the detail of the sensed whole and find out your relative value within the whole. That's quality. But isolated unity is beyond quality. And since we've been told the soul is the quality of life, so it's a big thing. But being is life itself. And there is a curriculum in which you can pursue that as long as you don't ignore the realm of quality, because we cannot. We're in it forever, cyclically forever. We'll never solve a universe if we don't deal with quality. And we'll never know the essence of a universe if we don't deal with life as ourselves. Okay, any further questions before we get into the next phase?
I have one more comment on that particular thing. I like to think in terms of frequencies, and so like all these relative qualities that we have, they're all like different frequencies.
Yes.
And that which everything absolves into. In other words, all the frequencies, they just expand and expand and disappear, as it were, into that
Eventually.
into that oneness which is beyond the relativity.
Where there can be no frequency
Right, exactly.
whatsoever. It gets to the inner, it gets beyond. We're going to have a little meditation, not long. And that'll set you up for your discussion groups. And you know how it goes. Let the same facilitators please take their places, and Francis, maybe you'd like to help, or how do you feel about that? You'd like to, but you're sneezing. Okay, you'll infect everybody. That'd be, karma, bad. Okay. So we'll have just a little meditation. And it'll be more to get us in touch with the what this stands for, So, gosh. All right. So again, we have this sense of being together here in one state of quite unified consciousness as the work has gone on. We're creating a group field that can be impressed by the higher ideas. And we have dealt with isolated unity and the substantiality which it represents, the beingness it represents. We have learned how to isolate the substratum, the one thing, the only one thing. Whatever is going on in the content of consciousness of the one logos, we've learned how to isolate a little bit the presence of that great being that we all are. And we're all this, horizontally, we're all this united spirit of which there is only one, just as there is only one monad. It is the great homogeneity that you can't help but be. It's life. But this life is a self-objectifying, self-becoming, self-finitizing, self-attenuating life. It seems to become all kinds of things of different magnitude. From the great dualities and trinities of the very highest possible worlds, all the way down to the tiniest ultimate particle events for any universe, and everything in between, and all kingdoms, and all creative hierarchies. They're all monads, and they're just monads at different degrees of, I call it prakritic immersion, immersion in matter. The limited self-objectification or less limited self-objectification, all these monads at all the different levels, a whole Jacob's ladder of immersed monads. And you know, they're all related. There is no thing, no emanation, no attenuation of the one, which is out of relation with any other. Every factor within the wholeness is in relation to every other factor, direct or indirect relation. So the detail within this unity is potentially incredible, and DK has given us in Cosmic Fire and some other places just a little bit of the ABCs of these relations. You read Cosmic Fire, you think you might be overwhelmed with the intricacy of it all. You know, he starts to detail the different types of devas and said, I'm just beginning, and all the different planes and their vibratory capacities and all the different stages of consciousness for the different subplanes, and it's like an overwhelming amount of interrelated differentiation. And when we're following, now of course, look, there are many different types of second ray souls. 3 main types. The wisdom type, such as the Buddha, he didn't emphasize the detailed unity. He knew it all, but he knew for whom he was speaking that it was very practical not to get into all that. And then there's the pure love type of second ray soul, like the Christ, and he's not so much working with the specifically mental part of the second ray, but with the magnetic interrelation of all these things. Their oneness in the magnetic love. And then there's the DK type of occultist. It's coming in on the 3rd sub-ray of the second ray, and it's, like we saw, detailed unity, specialized detail. It makes for the true occultist who studies all the parts and pieces scientifically. And he doesn't stop there. He says there are other types on the second ray. I would suspect there are 7 sub-rays. He doesn't elaborate on them. So we're looking at a kind of a special angle on the second ray, but it's not really exclusive of the others. We all have to be wise, we all have to be loving, and we all have to know how things are related. And we just may emphasize one of that triangle point or another, depending on who we are, but each of us has to have some measure of that. Now, I remember some people picking up cosmic fire, you know, and they're trained in a different way in this hill. They're just appalled. It's just like this. It's just like a 19th century botany book, you know. Just, you know, and classifying everything and this and that, and they don't want to follow it with their mind. They're not interested in the detail of the sense whole. And just even the very beginning of it, volume after volume, could be generated by a mind like DK. But we have a different sense of values here. And we know that we have to have a well-stocked mind, says Alice Bailey. And we know that DK would have us study these intricacies without losing love and without losing wisdom. So just think of your own approach. Here you are, a student of occultism, you know, at whatever depth you are studying it. You're studying the ageless wisdom and the revelation of what most people consider to be fanciful and nonsensical, and you take it as factual. Okay. So, do you think you want to approach the world developing this pure reason within inclusive reason? Are you interested in this intuitive, infallible comprehension which grasps the detail of the sensed whole and knows simultaneously the cause and the effect, the whither, the wherefrom? Will this help you? Are you inclined in this way? Have you done it a bit? Or can't you be bothered with it? And if you have done it a bit, what has come to you as a result of your greatly expanded sense of interrelations within the ring past knot you are studying? DK doesn't go beyond our galaxy, though he hints at the names of 49 galaxies that the masters know. We're still pretty much within our local one about whom naught may be said, which is big enough for us. Do you want to know the detail of the sensed whole? The other night we saw Nicholas show us these incredible constellational and zodiacal interrelations. Would it be useful to know those things? Would it be useful to know the relationship between the various creative hierarchies and how they cooperate with each other to make the manifested whole? Do you want to know the energies that are at play in you, on the earth, and in the solar system and beyond? How will it help you if you're interested? Can you, will you, do you want to approach the expansion of your consciousness through the medium of the technique of inclusive reason? Not everybody will emphasize any of these things to the same extent, depends on your raise. But everybody who approaches the third degree and beyond must have some sense of isolated unity, some sense of Buddhic inclusive reason, and some ability to present the attributes demanded by the divine plan. And that will be the line of our thought when we break into the groups, and we'll sound an Om to just confirm this line of thought within the beauty of the divine pattern, the beauty of the intricate relations within the sensed whole. Okay, friends, get into your groups and let's see what happens. Okay? Okay, so Francis will also lead one of the groups. You know, if you get into the groups, you've got 4 people, 5 people, 6 people, great. That's about the max. Because you get more, you get to express more and go deeper when there are fewer people. So, Jeff and Eva and Kathy and Eva Marie and Francis and Dwayne. Have I left anybody out? Is Helena? No, Dwayne. Dwayne appears to be, Dwayne has ascended. Okay, get into your groups and go to the same places you were before.